We were talking about the politics of this because addressing this isn't a political issue because it's clearly not working as just a social issue among individuals. I think it's hard to put all the blame on lawmakers of either party when the people who put them into place is us. And clearly Americans have not been voting with one voice on the issue of gun violence. They're not voting to say that we want gun violence to end. We want to elect people who are going to do this in Congress. Despite the numbers that you've pointed out, and you pointed out them a little bit earlier, the majority of Americans don't own guns. And the majority of Americans want stricter gun laws.
Right. Right. I mean, I guess it's a matter of what gets prioritized at the polls, which is to say, I mean, I suppose people think that other things are more important, and that's what they vote on first. But I do think that there's honestly, a lack of knowledge among lawmakers. I mean, I think like the same playbook has been enforced since background checks were first introduced in the 90s and the assault weapons ban. And we kind of always go back to those things instead of thinking of new ideas and also being honest that, like, for example, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which we were talking about earlier, if I'm going to be totally frank and honest, was a pretty worthless bill. Nobody wants to hear.
We had Chris Brady on.
Right.
Murphy.
I'm sorry, Chris Brown on from Brady, who was arguing that that was actually a very big deal.
No, it was a feel-good bill. It is valuable on the margins, and I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about red flag laws, which allow, a person to petition a court to have guns taken from their loved one temporarily. But that's like such an abdication of responsibility. That, again, puts the issue back on regular people to police their loved ones, which isn't really appropriate. I mean, I think it's either like you have to be honest and say what will actually work, which is what nobody wants to hear, which is that there are just simply way too many firearms and they're way too accessible. And even if
they're too powerful?
And they're too powerful. Even handguns, too. Again, that's why in Australia, it doesn't matter if it's not politically acceptable to say it. I'm not here as a politician or anyone who works in politics. I'm a journalist. Whether or not you like it, the only thing that really works, if you really wanted to bring down gun violence, was to do what Australia did and to do what many other countries in Europe do. I realize I will get so much hate mail over this. People will tell me that I'm a communist and all of these other things, and I'm so terrible, which also only reinforces the point, as I will definitely get, some sort of like
blowback,
not just blowback, but like threatening blowback, which is to say, like, these people like who are supposed to be so law-abiding are so quick to tell me that, like, I ought to die or whatever else it is.
Or you better watch out.
Right. Like,
Mark,
it's not,
weigh in, join this.
Well, look, I mean, there's so much we don't know still, Katie. I think we'll learn.
We're talking more broadly about gun violence. We don't need to focus too much on this individual incident, because this individual incident is so much like so many other incidents that we've been experiencing now for 20 years since Columbine. More than that. God.
Yeah, no, it's been
27 years.
Yep.
I think with each one you learn a lot more, Katie. I'm not sure we know all the details to this point. We do know that the shooter had a desire to kill Trump. We do know that the shooter suffered from gender dysphoria.
What
know
more
he
are you
targeted
learning, though, that
Catholic
will
schools.
change the way to address this? I mean, what more do you learn from each individual incident, which shows that a person has a problem, they're mentally ill.
I think
they have violent ideations.
I think
what
when you say that the
learning?
American people don't want to end gun violence, I don't agree with that. I think the reality is Americans do. The difference is, how do you get there? And I think that there's a consensus that you say, how can you protect the gun rights of law-abiding citizens, but also deny gun rights to those who are either mentally ill or those who are breaking the law? That's the challenge. It's not an easy solution, Katie. At the same time, I think there is a desire to say we do need to fortify our schools better than we have.
Well, there is an easy solution, though. I think that's the problem. It's just that it's the solution that is, because of this fluid interpretation of the Second Amendment that's been advanced since the early 90s. And just remember that for most of American history, the way the Second Amendment is the way it's interpreted now, that every individual has the right to own and carry a firearm, is like basically a new idea that even conservative jurists disagree with. Yeah. It's not. There is a civil solution.
But if you take, go ahead. What is, in your opinion, the
The
simple
solution is
solution?
there's no way to account for how many guns there are because there's no register. There's no registry. This notion that a tyrannical government's going to come in and take them kind of rings hollow now when there's martial law basically being imposed in Washington, D.C. This was the conservative fantasy that we were always warned about. It's not. This is what's happening.
I'm not so sure the Second Amendment is that fluid. I think the reality is that you said yourself, the vast majority of murders are actually happening in our inner cities.
Yeah.
And the reality is that what are you going to do to help deny somebody their Second Amendment rights who actually could be a victim of violent crime in our inner cities?
That's a deflection. We've seen thousands.
What was false about that?
Thousands of children. I said deflection, not that it was false. The issue is that thousands of children have been victims of gun violence since Columbine. And we don't need to learn anything else to know that an assault weapons ban, reinstating an assault weapons ban, would go a long way towards reducing the number of people who have died or who have otherwise been victims and who will die and who will otherwise be victims in this country. Universal background checks would be another such example of something common sense supported, I think last poll I saw, about 88% or so of the American people. It is only Republican leaders in Congress and in the White House who are opposing this kind of common sense reform and who therefore are continuing to make our streets unsafe.
Do you hear Democrats loudly campaign on that, though?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely, I do. Now, to be sure, there have been other issues that have propped up over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And to your point, while the American people, when you poll them, would like to see gun violence be reduced or just outright eliminated in this country, don't always vote the way that they think, in terms of the people who they elect, who then go to do literally nothing other than kowtow to the National Rifle Association.
But take what Mark said, not denying gun rights to law-abiding Americans who have that right under the Second Amendment. And we can argue about whether the Second Amendment gives you
there is no
the rights
tension.
that conservatives believe it gives you. There's an argument,
Katie,
the legal argument out
right
there.
now it
Katie,
does.
there is no tension between an assault weapons ban and the preservation of people's Second Amendment rights.
Is there
The
no
Democrats,
tension?
if the
Is there no
Democrats
tension,
thought
Mark?
this was such a winning issue, they just controlled the White House, the House, and the Senate. I did not see them advancing significant gun control legislation.
Oh, I would love to
Well, they didn't
respond.
have 60 votes in
As
the
someone who
Senate.
was in Congress when we had majorities in the House and in the Senate and in the White House, where we did pass that very important bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which did more than what my friend Mike just said. We advanced an assault weapons ban. We advanced universal background checks. Republicans opposed it, and they weaponized the filibuster. Now that is a factual.
Something
that is a factual claim
that you just asked, Monter, which is how does an assault weapons ban violate the Second Amendment?
Look, I think the Second Amendment is pretty straightforward. It's pretty straightforward that you're not going to deny people their ability to keep and bear arms. It's straightforward. So I think that, again, the question becomes, how do you protect those who are law-abiding citizens from maintaining their rights to keep and bear arms?
Well, it's the thing about that, though, is that even that notion is discretionary, right? Because they're not in conflict. If you can ban machine guns and you can ban automatic weapons, that's just a judgment call that you're making.
Which is the status quo, by the way.
Then you can certainly ban assault weapons. However, if you're going to ban assault weapons, there were a lot of ways in which that ban did go wrong, and that sunset clause that was put in there by Democrats, which was a poor negotiating maneuver when that bill first was
So there's
passed.
a lot we don't know about this particular incident, about what weapon is using. We do know the person suffered from gender dysphoria and he targeted Catholic students.
But Adam
and we're not
Lanza,
talking about, hey, what are the solutions
But what
to
about
actually protect
Newtown?
Catholic Christians?
What about Newtown,
Fair.
Parkland, Las
But it's
Vegas,
like, we're
Buffalo?
going-
None of those people had gender dysphoria. The Pulse nightclub shooting, which targeted a gay nightclub, like this is not. I understand that this is we're gonna do the thing where we're gonna focus on the fact that this person was suffering perhaps from gender dysphoria, but that's really not the relevant point at all. All these people are suffering from something. They're obviously unwell. They've decided to kill a bunch of people. The point is that you nor anybody else knows when these people are going to shoot anybody. You just don't. Whether it's
You say
daily
that,
street
but
crime.
we
I would
don't
go
know
further
yet
to say
if
at
there
this
are
point
not
that the
there are reports
opponents
that
of an
people
assault
missed on
weapons
this.
ban and universal background checks do know that this will continue to happen, and they don't care enough because they're too busy, lining their pocketbooks with money from the NRA and nonprofits that pay them a large amount of money to get on television and spew talking points that have nothing to do with how to make this country safe.